Today, we would like to look at working inside the computer. That is session 3. Working inside the computer. Sometimes it becomes necessary to take or rip apart the computer and bring it all back together to enable you either replace a spoiled component or add on. This, when you know how to do it very well, it will help you to build your own system from scratch. When you buy the individual components, you can put them together and build them from scratch yourself. So in this session, we are going to learn how to open the computer case, how to disassemble and reassemble the components in the desktop computer system. We are hoping that at the end of the system, of the class, you will be able to disassemble and assemble the computer, know the methods and devices that are needed for cooling the computer system, and be able to select proper power supply that will meet the power needs of your system. So the topics to be covered in this session are 1, working inside the computer case. Then 2, cooling methods and devices. 3, power supply selection. So topic 1, working inside the computer case. Let's start. Now, if you want to work inside a computer, I know you are excited already, you want to start working, but don't just start. You need to plan and organize yourself. You must know what you want to do. That will guide you to do a meaningful job or a more successful job. So the first thing we say is that try to make notes as you work so that you can go back later if you realize that you've made a mistake. Again, remove jewelries. Then the screws and the spaces, keep them in an orderly manner. Or you can get a cup or a tray and put your screws in them. Because some of the screws are tiny. If you don't take it, by the time you finish, if a screw is missing, you can't put it back again. Then it means you have to go and buy one or something. And then when you are working with the boards, do not stack boards on top of each other. A pin may be broken or something can happen. So do not do that. Then when you are handling motherboard, the card, the drive, please do not touch the chips on the device. The same goes for when you are handling the CPU. Please do not touch the chips on the device. If you want to protect your microchip, don't touch it with a magnetized screwdriver. A screwdriver that has the magnetic capability, please do not use it on your microchip. Other than that, you'll be causing some damage to it. Then never touch the inside of the computer that is turned on. If possible, avoid removing the cover or putting your hands inside the monitor and power supply. This power supply, do not be dismantling it unless it is very, very, very necessary. Unless it is very, very, very necessary. And then when you are working in because it is metal, please watch out for some sharp edges because it can cut you, and that's also not be good. Now, having done this, you are now ready to open the computer case and examine the system. If you are starting with a computer that is already working, there's nothing wrong, or maybe there's something wrong with the computer but it's working, then please, first of all, remember to back up important data. Get external drives and other things and copy your work and store it so that if anything goes bad, you still know that you have not lost your data. Then the next thing is to power down the system and then unplug it. Then press and hold down the power button for a moment. We have already said why, so I don't have to repeat it. Then you have your plastic bag or your cup or your tray handy to help you keep your screws. Then open the case. I said earlier, opening the case It doesn't have one formula. I have seen some that you just have to slide. You understand? So check the user manual or website of the case manufacturer you are dealing with. That will help you to know how you can open your case. In my case like this, they are screws. So I just remove the screws. Then once I have done this, the next thing is to clip my ground bracelet to the side of the computer because of the ESD we've talked about already. Then moving on, I would want you to do this exercise for me. First, get a computer, try to open the computer case. After you have opened the computer case, draw a diagram of the inside of the case for me and label all the drives, because we have already talked about the things, the components in the computer. I don't have to go back again. Label the motherboard, the cooler, the dual inline memory model, memory models that are available, and any expansion cards that are installed on your computer. So I know 2 or 3 people should not have the same diagram, because you may have a video expansion card, this one may not have, so it should be different. And then I want you to draw a diagram of all the cable connections to the motherboard. Then write down the color of the small wires and their position on the pins, because all these color codings, they have what they do. They are not just for decoration, they have what they do. So draw them and then we will see what we can do. Now after that, you have to remove expansion cards. You have to remove expansion cards. We will talk about that soon. Now, to remove the motherboard, first of all, unplug the power supply lines to the motherboard. See, the motherboard, the power, this power supply is also connected to the motherboard, as I showed you, see. So before you work on it, remove it, unplug it, so that there is no power flowing into it again. If there is an audio wire from the optical drive to the motherboard, try to disconnect that one too. Then unplug the parallel ATA, the serial ATA, and the floppy drive cables to the motherboard. Disconnect any wire that is leading from the front of the computer case to the motherboard. Disconnect it. Then disconnect any other cables or wires that are connected to the motherboard. Then after that, you remove the screws. The motherboard, they are held by screws. The screws are here. You see, the screws are here. You remove these screws. You remove them. Use your screwdrivers, the appropriate screwdriver, to remove the screw from the motherboard. And now, after you have done it, you carefully remove the motherboard. So you see how it is it's being done. Now, if you have to remove the power supply, which is not always necessary, but if you have to, then please locate the screws. In our case, you see this is the power supply. So the screws are here. So you must locate the screws that is holding it, 1, 2, 3, yeah, and this. So you must locate the screws that are holding the power supply, and then you unscrew them. When you are doing this, be careful not to remove any screw that hold the power supply housing itself. Remember, you are not dismantling the power supply, because that one, if you dismantle it, I don't know what you are going to do with it. You are just removing the power supply from the case. So please make sure you don't cause any harm than good. Then after that, you now remove the drives. Carefully remove the drives. If the drive is attached to the drive bay, like you see here, then remove the screws and just take it. Now check if there is a catch underneath the drive that you must lift up as you slide. Some of them you have to lift and slide. Some of them you just have to remove. So you just have to This one, you have to be a bit inquisitive to know more. For hardware, you have to be inquisitive to know more. Then some drive bays have a clipping mechanism to hold the drive in the bay. So that one, if that is the case, first release the clip and then pull the drive forward and out of the bay. If the drive has an exposed circuit board on the bottom of the drive, please don't touch it. Do not touch that board. And then for cases with removable bays for small drives, please first remove the bay to enable you remove the drives from the bay. You see here how the drives are being removed. You see, this one, I think you just have to clip something and then you bring it. This one, you have to press it down. So it is dependent on whichever one that you are using. So you must identify it and then work accordingly. The next thing is to install components in the case. That is, after we are trying to remove them. So if you have removed them, then how do you put them back? Let's go back a bit and look at how to remove the expansion card. If you want to remove the expansion card, remove any, these are the expansion cards, PCI cards, all these things. Please remove any wire or cable that is connected to the card. Then remove the screw that is holding the card to the case. After you have done that, with 2 hands, hold it firmly and remove it by lifting it straight up. Hold it firmly and remove, not so much strength, but it should be firm, and then you remove it. As you remove the card, make sure that your fingers are not on the edge connectors or it doesn't touch a chip. And then after you've done that, do not stack the cards on top of each other. Having done this, you have more or less been able to remove almost all the components in the case. Now we want to put them back together. How do we do it? If you want to put them back together, this is the order in which you must put them. After you've removed, you see that the case will be empty. There will be nothing in the case. It will be left with this base and then the empty thing. So first of all, you put the power supply. You remember I asked you to draw the inside of your computer. See, when you do that sketch, it will help you to put it back. Today, you people will use use camera to take a snapshot of it. That's also fine. The idea is to help you to know where each of them was located so that you can take them back when need be. So, first of all, you put the power supply, then the drives, then the motherboards, and then the cards. Then you place the motherboard inside the case and you screw it as necessary. Don't screw it unnecessarily. And then also it's not because of that you not screw at all. If not, it will just fall down. So screw it until it is firm and it will hold. Then you now connect the power cords from the power supply to the motherboard. And then you connect the wire that leads from the front panel of the case, the front panel of this case. You connect the wire that leads from there to the front panel of the motherboard. And then you are mostly done. If you read pages 63 and 66 of the prescribed course book you are asked to buy, you will see how almost all of this is done well. Then after that, you connect the wires to the ports of the front panel. Then you install your video card if you had any. And then the expansion cards. Make sure that everything you have done is correct. How do you make sure? By referring to the diagram or the snapshot you took. That will help you to ensure that everything is in order. Then after that, you now plug in the keyboard, the monitor, and the mouse. And then you turn on the power to check if it is working properly. If not, then you dismantle again and check where, because if there is any error, if something goes wrong, when you turn it on, you hear some beeps. Each beep will tell you where the error is coming from. Some will let you know that the error code will be there. If you don't understand, copy the error code, go online and check the mean. Then you see what is happening. It may be maybe the RAM, you have forgotten to replace the RAM, or you didn't fit it or something. So the beep will come and then you will know what to do. Let's move on to topic 2 and look at some cooling methods and devices. This cooling is like we are mentioning it and mentioning it and mentioning it because it is important. The computer we are working with, it gets hot and needs to be cooled down. So let us look at some of the cooling methods and the devices. We have what we refer to as the processor coolers. This cooler sits on top of the processor. It sits on top of the, this is one of them, it sits on top of the processor, and it consists of a fan and a heat sink, like I showed you. And the work of the heat sink and the fan has been said already. Then we have case fans and other heat sinks. The computer case may need many fans, but it is important for you to get bigger fans so that you reduce the number of fans that are needed. If you need about 8 fans and you get 3 big fans, I think the 3 big fans can do the work of the smaller 8 fans. It is better to use larger and fewer fans. And then you can also use the liquid cooling systems. You can use the liquid cooling systems. Dust is something you cannot control. No matter how clean your environment is, dust will still find its way into your system. So, and this dust, when it enters the computer, it causes overheating, and sometimes it causes jumps in the PC. If possible, twice in a year, try to open the computer case and blow it. Clean it, get rid of the dust. Do the same for your keyboard. Then the power supply selection. How do you select your power supply? Topic 3, power supply selection. How do you select your power supply? Your power supply that you are going to select must be dependent on the form factor. If you remember, we talked about what a form factor is, describing the standards, the shapes, the screw holes, and all those things. That should tell you how the power supply that you should use. And then, because in the power supply, you have the wattage ratings. The form factor will let you know the wattage rating, that the wattage that is accepted, the number and the type of connectors, the fans that are inside, and all those things. So you must take a good look at the form factor that you are selecting. You say that the form factor of a power supply, it determines the size of the power supply and the placement of screw holes and slots that are used to hold the power supply to the case. So the wattage ratings will help you to determine the amount of power supply that your system or that power supply you have can supply. And they are in the documentation. Those of you who don't like reading, if you read the documentation, you will get every information that is needed. And then we now look at the number and the type of connectors. The number and the type of connectors. You must consider the number and the type of power cables and connectors that the unit provides. And then you must also look at the fans that are inside the power supply unit. See, most power supplies, they come with fans inside the case. Some of them have 2, some have 1. So you must look at the fan that came with your power supply unit. And then if you think it is not enough and you want to add, you just decide on that. The fan can be mounted on the back or on the top of the power supply unit. That's the PSU. The larger the fan, the better. And then it makes it also quiet, because if you have more fans, click, 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 the noise is just too much. So if you have fewer fans, it is better. There are other extra features that you can look at. Just consider the warranty of the power supply and the overall quality. Sometimes, as students, you may think it is better to buy cheap things. Cheap things are not always good, but it doesn't mean that cheap things are also always bad. But you must always check the warranty of the power supply that you are buying and the overall quality of that power supply. It is important for you to check. Don't think about money, think about quality first. Then some power supplies are designed to support 2 video cards. So you must look at it. Some of the technologies are the SLI by the NVIDIA people and the Crossfire by AMD. So you must check. And the quality of the power supply, as I said, may be dependent on the price. So avoid buying cheap power supplies. That brings us to the end of this session. It is important for you to understand that the ability to open the computer case and bring everything together is dependent on you. You have to make it a point to visit the labs and then try your hands on trying to open the computer case. Because if you don't practice, you will never know. So I encourage you to come to the labs, or if you have old systems, use your old systems and try as much as possible to open them and try bringing them together and see if it works. That is the only way you will know whether you have understood what has been taught or not. Thank you.